What's up, rockers? Welcome to another episode of that Talk Louder podcast where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, and Instagram. And always at our website, talklouderpodcast.com. I'm Metal Dave, along with my co-host Jason McMaster. And today's guest is going to just be a riot. I was a big fan of his, watched him all the time on TV. And yes, I said TV. I know most of the time we have guests on this show that are musicians. You listen to their records, you go to their concerts. This guy was on television. He was on That Metal Show, VH1 Classic, for 14 seasons alongside Eddie Trunk and Jim Florentine. We've got Don Jamieson with us today.
He is really a ball of energy. He's this little guy with sideburns down his neck that goes on tour with bands and warms up the audience with comedy. And I think that people still hear that and are amazed. What, a comic opening or a heavy metal show? That's strange, you know. And it's not strange to me because they've been doing it long enough. Now, I say they, his cohort, Jim Florentine, does it sometimes as well. And it doesn't happen often enough. I think that it's a great sort of leeway during a set change. And definitely, it definitely would help sell a ticket to a big concert if they're, because of That Metal Show. I was thinking earlier, you know, That Metal Show was a great sort of compliment to hard rock artists because, you know, people just watching that show knew a new record was coming out, or maybe this artist had a new book about their, you know, the recording of a certain album or something like that. And I just think that it went hand in hand with what the rock musician and infamous or famous rock artists were up to, and it was like news. They were like doing news about rock and roll. I thought it was genius, even though they took some hits and were called, you know, Wayne's World or whatever. And I'll say it right now, if it wasn't for That Metal Show, probably me and Metal Dave wouldn't have this podcast.
Yeah. Absolutely. That show was exactly what guys like you and I always dreamed of. I mean, you never saw that type of show on television that catered to the hard rock audience, that was hosted by knowledgeable people who knew the music, knew the personalities, knew the life, knew the touring, knew the whole thing. It wasn't just some talking head that got assigned the story to interview Gene Simmons that night. It was a dude who went to concerts his entire life, collected all the albums. So it was coming from knowledgeable people. And speaking for myself, and I think I can speak for Jason and probably most of our listeners, we wanted a show like that so bad we could taste it, and then we got it in the form of That Metal Show, and thankfully it lasted 14 seasons, and it was something I watched religiously, so couldn't be more proud to have Don Jamieson on the show today.
Yeah, he's currently out on the road with the Dead Daisies that features Glenn Hughes, and Doug Aldrich.
Yes,
isn't that correct?
That's
so
correct.
They're a powerhouse. Would you call that a super group?
Yeah, and don't forget Tommy Clefetos. I don't know how you say his last name, but he's on drums, and I actually saw him. He toured with Black Sabbath, and he did a pretty good Bill Ward. I got to give him credit for that.
Unbelievable. So it is a super group, and they're actually in Texas at the moment. It's unfortunate that we're not a live podcast, so by the time this airs, they'll be back in their homes.
They'll be home in bed.
Yeah, it'll be all over by that time. So it was great to be able to hook up with Don Jamieson, infamous for That Metal Show with Jim Florentine and the mighty Eddie Trunk. Let's get on with the show.
Yep. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm getting close to you guys, man. I'm in Houston right now, and on my way over to Austin pretty soon, in a couple days. So out on the road with the Dead Daisies right now and having a blast.
Yeah, were you in San Antonio last night?
We were, yep. We played the
Yeah.
Rocks, and we were Dallas the night before, so we're making our little Texas run down here, and the crowds down here are always killer. So
Nice.
And you're in Austin tomorrow.
Houston tomorrow, Austin on Sunday, if we're going live. But yeah, as we're taping this, yeah.
Right. No,
Right.
we're not live. So by the time they see this, you'll be back in Jersey for all I know.
Probably.
Taking a well-deserved nap, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully I'll be seeing at least one of the two of you guys when I get to Austin. Hopefully.
Yeah. I'll try to drag Dave down there, and we'll try to come see you for a bit.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. I love that venue. The venue's really
Yeah.
cool.
Good venue.
Come and take it live is where you're going to be. And,
Yeah.
As long as there's a microphone and an audience, every venue's good to me.
Amen. Amen. Spoken like a true punk rocker who doesn't. Right. It doesn't matter if there's people there and I'm there. It reminds me of Mr. Hand's class.
Right, exactly. But it's crazy because when we first went out to start the tour, their drummer Tommy Clefetos was fascinated that I was going to be doing comedy, opening up for a band, and he couldn't get it through his head. He's a drummer, so he's got to lug drums all the time. He's like, I don't know how you did it, man. How you figured out to go out on a rock tour, travel like a rock star, but you don't have any equipment, and you don't have to split the money 5 different ways, and you just, if there's a microphone, you could go do it. And I go, yeah, I've created this real simple life where I get the joy of doing comedy, but without any of the drama of actually being in the band.
Right.
Yeah. And, man, you just jumped ahead to like my question number 7 or something. But
Perfect.
I'll go ahead and ask it now since you brought it up. I was going to ask you, when you go out on the road opening for a rock band, now granted, you're a rock and roll dude and people know you from that metal show, and you're people are going to give you a fair shake because you're Don Jamieson and you've got the credentials and all that stuff. But is there any challenges that you face opening for a rock band when you know that the audience is there for live music and they're ready to mosh and headbang and all that stuff?
I think you just got to wear the right cutoff striper shirt and you're going to be okay every time.
How many of those do you have?
One.
It's going to be ripe by the end of the tour, folks.
Yes, but it's it radiates happiness and sunshine and striperness, and the crowd loves it. So you know what, man, try to answer your question. Yeah, I mean, I have that decent recognition factor with this audience, which is cool. But yeah, man, if you're not delivering the goods, the rock crowds could be tough. But, this tour has been amazing, and the crowds have been fantastic. And, I worked really hard on putting this set together, and I keep it all in the family. That's the main thing. I get up there, I'm not talking about my kids and my relationships, and which I don't have either of, but I'm not doing regular comedy club stuff. I'm up there talking about Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Metallica, Alice Cooper, Ozzy, and all that stuff. So I try to make it so it's kind of in vein of what's going on.
Yeah, when I saw you open for Faster Pussycat, part of your act, a good bit of your act was talking about Tammy and what was going on backstage. And so it was sort of an extension, or in fact, it was an opening for what was to come after. So it really did tie in really well.
That's the other key, is touring with a band that has a sense of humor and that gets, what you do, and those, Faster would come out and watch me every night. Cause every tour stop, I would have new stories from the road, and I would bring them up on stage with me, and they loved it. They took it with the love that it was intended. But yeah, but by about halfway through that tour, I was breaking their balls for about half the set.
Yeah,
as you should. As you should, and they probably would want you to break their balls. They're those kind of
I think
guys.
the bands feel left out when you're not sort of injecting a little humor on them in it. Even the Daisies. I have some good jokes about the Dead Daisies too. So, and they've been. I mean, what an honor to be on the road with a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer legend Glenn Hughes. It's just
yeah, that's
pinch
crazy.
myself every day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So they're good sports about it by the same way of Faster Pussycat, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. Rock and rollers. I mean, that's what they say. They said, "Oh, you can't combine rock and comedy," and I go, "No, the rock and comedy go hand in hand, like Marilyn Manson and crazy. It's the perfect fit."
Yeah.
Most of the funniest guys I know are rock guys, and I even talk about that in my act, like how funny Ozzy still is to this day. Like no matter how much damage he does to himself, you hear him in interviews. He always has these great one-liners. He's like the Rodney Dangerfield of heavy metal. So, a lot of my inspiration, I say on stage, I learned to say motherfucker on stage from Dee Snider from Twisted Sister.
Dee's a great teacher.
Yeah, and that's a great segue because I want to go back close to where you live and how you kind of got your start. But you mentioned Dee Snider, he's still teaching frontmen how to front. He's still teaching everything that guy does, and I mean he's like a New York Bon Scott. He's like you know what I mean? He is a teacher, and even if
at 66,
even if he's teaching you how to say motherfucker. He's kind of
we all got to start somewhere.
Right. He's just an awesome powerhouse of a singer and a frontman and everything. For him to be right there in your backyard, and did you grow up, going to see Twisted Sister?
Yeah, I did. And I have other words in my vocabulary, but Dee said motherfucker with such relish over the years that I always appreciate it. But I also appreciate that the stage performance obviously as well. And so when I open for a band, I try to bring the same intensity as a guy like Dee, or other great frontmen, so that again it keeps it in the rock vibe. So I want my comedic presentation to have a rock and roll attitude to it. And
Dee's funny too.
Dee's hilarious. I mean, when I snuck into the Chatterbox in Seaside Heights, New Jersey,
here we go,
to see Twisted Sister. I didn't know who they were. I just knew of them. I heard them, I'd heard Shoot 'Em Down on the radio, I think at that point. And I walked in there and they're all in lingerie and, makeup. And I was like, oh my God, either these are the ugliest chicks from New York or the hottest chicks from New Jersey. I couldn't tell.
Oh, here it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're helping them warm up for tonight.
Thank God we have a podcast. Because, we're not paying Don to be on here. We can't afford him. But
it just warms me up for the show tonight. So this
exactly.
is
good.
We're getting free jokes here. Thank you, Don. So listen, let's go home. You're from New Jersey? Grew up in New Jersey?
Yeah, Jersey, New York guy, back and forth kind of my whole life. But been back in Jersey, living down by the beach for the last 10 years. And, it's my nice little quiet corner of the world. Obviously, Jason, you've toured all over the world. You know it, man. When you're home, you just want to be home.
Yes.
And you don't want a lot of noise and all the racket that goes along with what we do. So, I got a little house at the beach, man, and I love it down there, man.
Awesome.
It's good for the head.
Tell us a little bit about growing up. You don't have to go to your childhood, but how did you get into writing jokes or into comedy? And tell us about your earliest concerts and what makes you a rocker. What about it from back home? Because there's a lot of kick. I mean, Jersey is Fort Worth is like an unknown sort of like, there is like some sort of nuclei of heavy metal coming from Fort Worth, Arlington, DFW area. Now, I got to throw this in because we have a San Antonian on the show here, but San Antonio is well documented as the heavy metal capital of Texas and/or the world.
The world.
But Jersey is like that when you think New York and New Jersey. Jersey metal is out to crush. Overkill. Let's just start with that. Were you young to see Overkill shows in '87 ish?
Yeah, well, I was a DJ on the college radio station, and my show was the Monday Night Mayhem. So yeah, I was playing all these bands on my radio show, and yeah, well, I got to go. There was a club called Birch Hill, and that's where tons of bands played. I mean, I saw a million bands there, made out with a million chicks in the parking lot there. So yeah, we always had a good, strong scene in Jersey, and still is. I mean, there's cover bands that play 3 months during the summer. They play every beach bar up and down the Jersey Shore, and they don't work the rest of the year. They're amazing.
Wow.
So Jersey still loves their rock. Yeah, but for me, I didn't come out of the womb with a handful of dick jokes in my pocket. But when I hit about 11, 12 years old, I saw Kiss Destroyer in a record store, and I made my mom buy it for me. I kind of knew what Kiss was about from seeing them like on Don Kirshner's rock concert, and I just remember taking that album home and holding it and going, like, for a 12-year-old, this is the coolest thing on earth. They're rock stars, they're comic book heroes, and they're superheroes.
Yeah.
So, and then I put it on, and Detroit Rock City starts playing, and I'm like, okay, I'm in trouble here, because this is the coolest shit ever. And then I had a buddy in school who, like, my parents were a little more conservative, but you always had that friend, or maybe if you were the guy, maybe you two were this guy, but his parents let him listen to anything. So he would make me tapes of like George Carlin and Cheech and Chong and give them to me at school. And then I would take them home and listen to them late at night when my parents went to sleep. So those two worlds always, I always loved those two worlds, comedy and heavy music. And I'm still the same 12-year-old kid. I still love both those things more than anything.
Yeah. So you obviously combined the two worlds, comedy and rock and roll. I was going to ask, do you play an instrument? Do you play any music at all, or no?
I play a little guitar, not very well, but if a band asks me to come up and jam, I can keep a decently steady rhythm. But now most of the guitars I have now, I collect, and they're up on my wall in my house. I leave that to the masters. I have too much respect for music.
Yeah. So we usually ask people on the show, because usually they're musicians or record nerds, that sort of thing. But you're the first stand-up comedian we've had on the show. So I wanted to ask you, do you remember your first stand-up gig as a spectator? Do you remember going to your first comedy show?
I used to go hang out. I was when I was in college, I used to take the train in from Jersey into New York City, and I would go up to a famous club on the Upper West Side called To Catch a Rising Star, and that's where everybody started. Seinfeld and Colin Quinn and Rita Rudner and a million other people. And I used to just go up there, and go in and hang there and watch. And I saw all those comics in there in their early days before they made it. And then then a couple of years later, you see them on the Johnny Carson show and stuff like that. So yeah, I always gravitated to that world. And then, the guy that changed my life as far as my taste in comedy, and really seeing a guy take comedy to rock star level heights, which was Dice, and, Dice was and still is my comedy idol to this day. He's the embodiment of a rock star in a comedian's body. I was there when he played Madison Square Garden. I was there when he played the Meadowlands in Jersey. I went to Nassau Coliseum to see Dice, and I just saw the power that he had with those crowds. I mean, it was like mania back then, like you would be in the crowd, and like, if you didn't laugh at every joke, like, people would like start to like get mad at you. It was like you had to worship at the cult of Dice. So it was,
Wow.
I just never saw anything like that before in my life. And I was instantly like hooked with that.
Yeah. Did you tour with him at one point?
I did about 10 years with Dice.
Wow.
Yeah, just amazing that, and Dice is still a very close friend of mine. So, yeah, to be that guy that was standing outside of the garden chanting Dice, 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 to, hanging out in hotel rooms with him till 3 a.m, eating potato chips and him telling me all these amazing stories from over the years in his career. And then to open for him, obviously we weren't playing places as big as the Garden, but, still playing 1,000, 2,000 people, and they're still Dice fans. So, I learned quickly, and this is why the rock crowds don't faze me, because with the Dice crowds, if I didn't get to that microphone before somebody yelled out, "You fucking sucked," I was dead.
Yeah. So you've seen it from both sides. So who parties harder, the stand-up the comics, or the rock stars? Because you both lead lives of, let's face it, there's a lot of loneliness out on the road, and comedians are very solitary. At least a band kind of has the bandmates and the crew. And like you said earlier, you show up, plug in your mic, and you're on. So and having hung out with Dice, tell us which group is the bigger bunch of misfits, the comedians or the rock stars?
Oh, well, who are the biggest bunch of misfits is a different question than who are the biggest partiers, because
answer both for us.
I think the biggest, I don't know. I think the bigger misfits are the comedians. And I guess the rockers are still the bigger partiers, but it's really not like it used to be, Jason, back, especially, in the heyday, right? That's when there was some serious partying going on. And it really makes me laugh, because to this day, there's still that mystique of the backstage. And when I go out with these rock bands, the Daisies are not big party guys. We'll still sit and have a couple beers together or whatever. But it's, it's funny. I see girls are like, I must be backstage. I have to be back no matter what. I must get back there. And then they work their way back after 2 hours. And it's just 5 guys sitting around talking about what their favorite Black Sabbath album is.
Right.
Drinking, 2 guys are drinking water. One of us is drinking beer. There's a few cold cuts sitting there, and there's nothing going on. And it's such a letdown for most people.
I was gonna say 5 old men staring at their phone.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Even more accurate.
That's pretty much what, right? That's pretty much what it's like at my shows. It's you walk, but why do you don't need to be back here. It's 5 old guys staring at their phone. When does the car leave back to the hotel? That's what I want to go back to the hotel so I can watch HBO. So hopefully I can see my friends do stand up on HBO when I get back to the hotel. Let's go back again. Like did you ever? Didn't I see you with Jim and a bunch of other people at Caroline's Broken Teeth tour? I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
I saw you open a set at Caroline's with what's his name, Judah Freelander.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he was there, and you and Jim were buddies with a female comedian who was just hilarious, and I can't remember her name right now.
Laura Levitas.
That's right, and that was probably 2008, 2007 or something. Anyway,
probably, yeah. That was before that metal show, I remember, yeah.
That's right. That's a legendary club, and I feel extremely lucky to have been there, and you and Jim were the reason we all got to walk in on your coattails. And that was a good time. That was a great time.
Well, you were one of the early rock guys that we befriended, because we were such big fans of you, and obviously still am, but you and Diamond Vinny, God rest their souls, were guys who loved to go out and watch comics. That was what they liked to do when they weren't on stage rocking, and you're the same kind of guy. And playing a place like Caroline's in Midtown Manhattan, it's the big showroom. That's when you're a young comic, you're like, I hope I play Caroline someday. So for musicians, you guys have those venues that you held dearly. Like if we could ever play there, that would be great. And then you play there, and then it's never enough. Then and then you're looking for the next big place to play. But
I think it's cool. Like when you grew up in the area, and then you get to do gigs at the places that you've gone to see your favorite comics at. That has to be the same kind of rush. I mean, the venues you mentioned earlier that you were there with Dice, I've played those venues. I Can Die a Happy Man. Those were, it's like I've played Cobo Hall and Nassau Coliseum. Well, guess what? I also got 2 words for you: Kiss Alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with Dice, I did Massey Theater in Toronto, which is where Rush recorded their first live album.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Wow. All the
So
stage.
I'm thinking about that as I'm going on stage. That Rush recorded All the World's a Stage right here.
Yeah, you're thinking like I am. There's a little bit of fanboy in all of us, and you think like that when you're just doing your thing. It's another day on the job, but you're also in this sort of like outer body experience because you spent many, I'll just say years staring at the fine print on the back of these records. And now you're standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. You're standing in the same spotlight. You're looking at the album cover in your head while you're standing there in the same spotlight. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that rush. And even just going to see, because you're friends with Dice, like you mentioned, talk about it again, where you were at, the Garden and were you backstage at that Dice show, or were you out in the crowd?
Oh no, yeah, Jason, back then I would have had no idea how to get backstage at anything. That there would be to me. It's that same mystique of like, I need to be backstage, And then when we started doing that metal show and I started getting to go backstage, I realized, it's not quite as exciting as you think. But, Dice told me a funny story because, Dice isn't a partier at all. And he said, he was asking me, he goes, what did you do like after the show? I go, I was outside with like thousands of other fans and we were still chanting Dice like 15 minutes after you left the stage. He goes, take a guess what I was doing 15 minutes after I left the stage. I go, oh, you were probably backstage with Playboy models and partying and rock stars and everything. He goes, I was in Brooklyn walking my dog, drinking a Slurpee from 7-Eleven.
Gone.
Like, wow. I go, my imagination of what you were doing was way better than what the reality of what happened.
Right. Well, it's kind of, it's so that this just kind of proves that it really is kind of the same if you're in a band or if you're a comic, especially if you're pretty much a rock and roll comic like you are. Once again, I really think that, you and Jim Florentine have like sort of circled around this great idea. And I guess Jim Brewer has, he's got that a little bit going on. But I don't know of a whole lot of comedians who have put this heavy metal comic thing in a box. And because you guys are the only, I've gone to see you guys at comedy clubs and you'll talk about, bands you like and music, and then you'll go into just dick jokes, and then you'll come back home to where your rock and roll mind is. But then the next comic will come on, or there'll be one on before you, and sure, they're talented and you're laughing, but there's something different about what's going on because it's obvious that you guys are headbangers, and so it's complementary to a lot of what. There's a reason why we want to talk to you, because we're going to end up talking about Black Sabbath and Kiss.
Yeah.
And plus somebody probably just canceled.
Yeah, well, we had Paul McCartney scheduled for the podcast today, but thankfully you were right here in Texas and you answered the call.
You were available, so we said, "Hey, Paul, can we postpone we're gonna Don Jamieson and stuff."
Yeah,
he gets bumped by me all the time.
Right, it's one of those things where you're following him on tour, and when he has to cancel, you take a red eye.
Yeah, and then all the calls come in for refunds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don,
I just wanted to mention because we do inject our love of this music into our nightclub act, not to the extent that I'm doing it when I'm out with the rock bands, right? You can't make striper jokes in a comedy club. You can't make a joke about Dream Theater in a comedy club, but you can talk about the bands that everybody knows, like Twisted Sister and Motley Crue and Ozzy, and so people get all that kind of stuff. But, the guy who really egged me on was the comedian Brian Posehn, who's another guy who's
that's right.
Comic.
He's a headbanger too. That's right. I'm sorry, Brian, I forgot him. I've only got to meet him one time, but what a super cat. What a mellow, cool, awesome dude who was in an episode of The Mandalorian. He's got us beat.
Yeah, and he said to me, because he came and did that metal show in the early days, and he was like, he goes, "Do you write a lot of stuff about metal and all that?" I go, "Not too much, because I don't want to waste time if the crowd's not going to get it." He goes, "I used to think that too." He goes, "But you'd be surprised. They know more than you think, and depends on how you set it up. If you set it up right, they'll get it even if they don't really know the band. Like I do a bit about Gwar in my act, and I do it in the nightclubs too, and maybe 3 people ever clap that know Gwar, but the way I set it up and explain that they wear monster costumes on stage and they decapitate each other with chainsaws. So I paint the picture for them so that when I get to the punchline, everybody laughs, because it doesn't matter if it's Gwar. It's just it's the visual that I create in their minds. So there is a way of presenting it. And I'm glad Brian said that to me, because then that really opened up the floodgates.
Yeah. Context is everything. Like you said, you don't even have to know what Gwar is or who they are, but you set it up right, and then you deliver that punchline, and they're laughing because the joke was funny, regardless of whether they know who Odorous Urungus is or not.
It's kind of like if you start with the chorus, you're leaving a lot of things out, so it's good to tell them the verse. Tell them the story getting up to the chorus, so then they can join in by the time the chorus gets there. If you start with the chorus, people who don't know it, they're going to be like, what the hell's going on? If you start with the verse, they're like, okay, I'm with you. Oh, and Living After Midnight. Got it, right? The thing is, Living After Midnight, technically, right, time out for a second,
Starts
the song
with the
Living
chorus.
After Midnight starts with the chorus.
It was a great musical comedy analogy right up to that point.
I blew it. Oh, I fixed it, and I blew it. Blew it apart right after I built it. So.
Don, before I forget, I wanted to wish you a happy belated birthday. Wasn't your birthday this week?
Yeah, I was out on the road with the Daisies, like celebrating my 5th birthday.
I was going to say
17.
Don't let the day over 75, man. Yeah. Whatever you're doing is working. So hey, I wanted to ask you about your comedy albums, because of course they have a heavy metal slant, especially the artwork and the titles. You've got one called Denim and Laughter that mimics the Saxon album Denim and Leather. You've got one that mimics Judas Priest, Hellbent for Leather, called Hellbent for Laughter. I wanted to know if, when you put these albums out, do you need to consult with these bands to sort of appropriate the artwork and the title, or not?
Good question.
Was I supposed to be asking for permission?
Whoops. Dave, hold on. Dave,
we'll edit that out.
I think you just blew it, bro. He's going to get cease and desist now.
Well, he hasn't done Kiss yet that I know of, so he should be safe for a while anyway.
Yeah, I'm avoiding the lawsuit happy bands, but no, it's I never really thought to ask, but Denim and Laughter though, Denim and Laughter I came up with actually drinking red wine with Biff from Saxon. And, and he knows, I did Live and Hilarious also, which is Live and Dangerous, Thin Lizzy. And he goes, all your comedy albums are parodies of your favorite bands. You haven't done a Saxon one yet. And I go, all right, how about, and I start, cycling through all those album titles and Denim and Laughter. And I said, you get me the permission to use the artwork, and that'll be the next one. And sure enough, that's what we did. So I was psyched that they were able to that one's all legal. The other ones, I'm still available to be sued, which would be good publicity.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Well, hey, I wanted to propose one for you because I know sometimes the creative juices run dry. I've got a proposition for you. Your next comedy album could be a parody of Anthrax. It would be called Among the Laughing. What do you say?
I like that. Yeah,
Very good.
sure.
Very good.
Among the Laughing. And
That's
you could
very
sort of
good.
superimpose your face on the cover with the guy with the hat.
You think
I'll
those
send you-
guys? Think those
I'll email
guys?
you my address.
Think
You can
those
send me
guys
the
would be
check.
cool with that?
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah. Think,
Well,
Yeah,
he
well-
hardly knows the Anthrax guys. He's from the East Coast. I bet Scott would think it was great.
I don't want to assume anything.
Yeah, no, but that we were talking about overkill before, but yeah, that's Anthrax, obviously a big part of the scene in Jersey, New York back in the day, and yeah, I've been lucky enough to get to know those guys over the years. You're like Scott would definitely dig it. Scott's really sometimes he's the whipping boy for people in this business. When they've talked enough shit about Lars, Scott seems to be the next in line sometimes. But he's just a terrific guy with a great sense of humor. So I will take that under advisement. I got to get a Motorhead one in there too.
Yeah,
yes.
definitely need a Motorhead.
No,
I was going to
still
ask you
something.
also, what's the greatest comeback you've ever unleashed on a heckler?
Oh boy, I don't plan them out. That's the thing, because you think when you first start, like I'm going to have all these great comebacks with people, and if they say something, I'm going to go, I fucked your mother or something, and then you realize like quickly that it's a weird thing. If you come back too hard on a heckler, the audience will turn on you.
Yeah.
Even if they're being an asshole, but the crowd doesn't know, because people will still come up to me after I'm doing this 22 years. They'll come up and go, "Oh my God, you tore that guy apart. Was he part of the actor?" And I go, "No, it's just, that's just what happened in the moment." I would, no, and then they'll always come and go, "Oh, I was helping you tonight," and no, you weren't. You're never, trust me, you're never helping. And there's not one comic that's ever done this job that likes a heckler or thought they were helping ever. So it's just an occupational hazard, like any other job. Some days the boss is an asshole and some days they're cool. And so it's just part of the gig. But I don't know. I don't really have a set comeback. It's just whatever happens in the moment.
Yeah. I didn't mean that you had one rehearsed. I just was wondering if there was a time when in the moment you just zinged somebody really bad and just handed them their ass after they were trying to be funny and bring you down.
I almost feel like there's I've seen Dee Snider like totally fry someone and they were just standing there. He's burning somebody and they're just standing there. Here you go. I now have to say it. There was Dave knows this club at the back room, and I think it was Desperado, one of his side projects. So this would have been early '90s, mid '90s, or something. And
Probably Widowmaker.
Wasn't a whole lot of Widowmaker. Thank you, Al Petrelli on guitar, Widowmaker.
Yes. Widowmaker.
And there's a guy wearing like it's the '90s. He's wearing like a lumberjack shirt and some plaid. He's kind of, looking grungy kind of thing. And he's leaning up against a pole and he's not like screaming or yeah or anything. He's just leaning up against a pole with a beer or whatever. And Dee's like, "Hey, you right there. What are you? What are you? Some kind of trickster?" Because he was wearing plaid. Remember the video where all the guys are wearing I thought it looked like they were wearing their pajamas, but they were wearing all plaid stuff. You remember that? They're riding motorcycles or something? Yeah. He was like, "What are you, a trickster?" And you had to have seen the trickster video to even know that.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So, and I can't believe he used it. He used that. "What are you, a trickster?" Anyway,
I'll give you one that my parents were in the crowd. And I never saw a look on my parent. All the crazy things I did in high school and college, I never saw a look like this in my parents' face, because I got myself into a situation with somebody in the front that they thought this is gonna doom the whole show.
Oh no!
These two women were sitting in the front row, and they were laughing really loudly. And at one point, the woman goes, "I'm sorry, I'm laughing," and I go, please don't ever be sorry for laughing loudly. That's what we want. I go, that the guy in the back who was heckling me before, that's what we don't want. This is the kind of noise that I like. And she's like, oh, okay, I just thought it was too loud. I go, no, and I noticed she was all tattooed. And I said, oh, what? I go, I asked her about the tattoos, and she goes, oh yeah, I got some here, and I got one on my foot. I go, oh yeah, what's that? She had open shoes on. I go, what's that one on your foot? And she's like, well, it's my dead husband's name. And
oh my God.
And I'm doing an hour. This is 5 minutes in.
Oof.
Yeah.
And the whole room just comes to a complete halt.
Morgue.
And I look at my parents' face, and they're like, holy shit. And I now in my mind, and this is all happening in like literally 1 second. In my mind, it's like, I gotta say something here that's either gonna end the night completely, or they're gonna carry me out on their shoulders. And she saw the look in my face, like she could see me thinking, the woman, she goes, oh no, don't worry. I'm remarried again. I'm very happy. I go, oh, okay, good. And and also you don't have a tattoo on the other foot. So at least if he dies, you have another place to put your second dead. And there was a half a second where nobody knew what to do. And then the place went ballistic, laughing just so loudly. And everybody just felt a sense of relief. And they all looked at the woman. She was cracking up. She was doubled over. So you never know what you're going to get into when you're up there.
So
that's awesome.
I have this thing that I always, because it's, people will come up to me and tell me that I'm a funny guy in between songs. Steve Whiteman is also he's strong in between songs. He doesn't let the audience, he doesn't want to lose anyone. He doesn't want to fuck around too much, but he's always keeping it really light and having funnies and, picking on people just a little bit to have fun with the crowd. And I'm not saying I stole that from him. I stole everything from, listening to all of the bands that I listen to, but especially people like Dee Snider. I think he's an amazing front man. If anything, he's the heckler, right? So you got to be careful about what you're using. You don't want to fuck with people too hard, and I probably learned how to say motherfucker on stage from Dee as well. But you're just working the room. As you were telling that, you're kind of like, it's not, that kind of stuff is not pre-planned. Like, we're writing songs to play, and what happens in between is improv.
Yeah.
So it's the same for a comedian, I would imagine. You have this material you're going to do, and you're going to set it up, and you're kind of working the room until you're setting this up. If someone interrupts you, you still have to think on your feet. You have to work the room in order to get back to where you were, or they're kind of fuck up your flow. It's like stopping us in the middle of a song on stage because somebody threw a bottle and hit you in the head, or whatever. It just depends on what it is. And you would have to deal with something like that too without getting arrested, anyone starting a fight, So that was a really good situation to bring this into my question. It's like, do you officially work the room improvisational sort of in between what would be, if you were playing music, your songs? You have your jokes, you have your you have your material, and in between you're kind of just working the room and saying hello and da-da-da-da-da, maybe commenting on the lady or this or that. How do you have any stories about how you had to think? You got any more of those?
Well, I mean, I think it's like I go on stage with a structure in my mind of kind of what I want to do, but then when I get there, I always hope it doesn't go that way, you know, because I got the structure. Because if you don't have the structure, then you just have chaos, right? You got to have a plan. But I can go off the plan and then come back to it because I know it's there. So I always have I always have my home base to come back to. But, you know, I told the Daisies, you know, when I got the offer to go out on the tour with them, I worked on this set for like 3 months straight, perfecting it, getting it perfect, getting the punchlines down, getting all the setups and the premises, getting the order of the material down to where it really flowed and made good sense. And then I told him, I'll do that the first night, and then I hope I never do it that way again for the rest of the tour. Because you got to leave room for improv. You got to leave room for the guy in the front row who looks like Scott Ian's grandfather. You know, you got to leave this space to be able to have fun. You know, oh, you know, look at thanks. You know, I loved you on Duck Dynasty, sir. You got to be able to, you know, move outside of the framework and have fun with it. And you know, most comedians I try to be precise with my delivery, but sometimes in the moment, you want to switch a joke around or say it a different way or whatever. And so I love having all that room to do that. But if I don't have a roadmap on how to get from the beginning to the end, then it's just nonsense. So as much as I could go rogue, go off road of what I want to do, that's when it's the most fun.
Like when there's a couple of different versions of Dave Grohl in the audience, you know, you've got Nirvana, Dave Grohl over here, and you've got Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl over here. Man, I loved you in Nirvana. And then you do another bit, you know, you go, oh, I loved you when you, wait a minute. You know what I mean? Hey, can y'all stand next to each other for a second so I can take a picture? Because that album and that album are my favorite albums. Never mind.
Yeah.
It's the same. Yeah. Working the room has to be so important, like you said, with any comedian. Like I would imagine, I remember seeing Dice as well as a lot of the comedians you've actually already mentioned on like late night comedy show, TV, and we would record them on VHS. I'm aging myself. And on my early tours on the tour bus, as soon as we were rolling out of town, everyone's on the bus and we're watching, you know, everyone's having a drink, right? And we're rolling down the road and we're watching VHS tape after VHS tape of all this shit that we recorded off of late night comedy TV. And it's all these guys, and a ton of it is Dice. And seeing people, not all of them, of course, they're kind of sticking to their plan. Because they know it's on television, right? And they probably super tight schedule, set time. You're on and go, right? When they announce you, you go, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, well, we're gonna push you back 5 minutes. No, because you're on TV. Dice working the crowd. There was these other guys, I can't remember their name. It was like they would sort of like hit like a slow spot. And then be like, hey, can I bum a smoke? Yeah, with the audience. And they're on TV. And it would turn into a bit. And I can't remember this guy's name. He was really good. I bet you would know his name. And he would be like, can I have a smoke? Thanks. And can I have a light? Yeah, thanks. And he'd be like, I'm sorry, I left mine in the machine area. You know what I mean? It's like just kind of going with moment. And it ends up being funny. Is there anything like that where you have come up with material by something where there was sort of a slowdown in your set and you maybe remembered it and wrote it down and interjected it into your show?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely, you know,
right?
Those moments, like I look at those moments as, that I just wrote a new bit. Essentially, you know, so when I get backstage, the first thing I do is write it down, whether was a one-liner or if it was a conversation, and you know, and then I try to work it in, you know, naturally as a new bit. So, you know, I see a lot of comics and of course, Dice is the master at crowd work. I mean, there's nobody better ever than he is. But I see comics will be on stage and they're very good at being extemporaneous. And then I'll say,
I'm sorry. What was that word again?
Alexa, what is the definition of extemporaneous?
Wow.
And and I'll go, dude, you got to write that down. That's such a funny bit. And he go, what did I say? And I go, oh, you know, you got to take advantage of those moments, because you never know when you know, just because you didn't sit down with a piece of paper or type it into your iPhone notes doesn't mean you didn't write something, you know, in that moment, you know, and it might not end up working out. But yeah, I try to always, those are the moments I try to remember when I get backstage.
I agree 100%. Dave can back me up on this. He was full on involved, and it's happened more than once. Be hanging out with Dave or talking to Dave or something, and one time he said, I forgot, Dave, maybe you can help me out here. You were talking about something and you said, yeah, it was like a crash landing affair. And I'm like, what did you say? And do you remember that? Tell us the story.
Jason and I were going to a concert here in Austin. It was one of these big outdoor day-long rock festival things. And Buck Cherry was on the bill, and I kind of became friends with the Buck Cherry guys because I was one of the early journalists that was sort of championing them and got them into Metal Edge magazine and all this stuff. So they were always taking care of me whenever they came into town. So me and Jason are driving to the gig. We pull up into it's a field, and we pull up into this field, and Jason goes, "Okay, man, so you got this all squared away. We're on the guest list. Everything's all sorted out." And I was like, "That's what they told me, but you know how these things are. It's all one big crash landing affair." And he goes, "What'd you say?" And I was like, "Crash landing affair?" And he wrote it down. And then, of course, he turned it into a song about a naughty stewardess on an airplane. But it made a Broken Teeth record. So, hey, there you go.
Yeah, Dave is my muse. I must confess, Metal Dave has been my muse for 25 years. Follow him around like a puppy dog, waiting for him to say something. He's my thesaurus. I have no great ideas until I'm in the room with Metal Dave. There, you heard it first on the Talk Louder podcast. He said that, and it worked out into a great lyrical miracle. And it was on, that's on Guilty Pleasure album, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yep. Which is coming out on vinyl soon, and Don, you will get a copy.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. Yeah, I know the song well, but now I know the inspiration.
Maybe Dave will get one until he gives me some more song ideas.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you could give me a transcript of this podcast, and then so I could study Dave's words, because so far I haven't written down anything that he said, but maybe I'm not reading between the lines enough.
Pay attention, Don. You might get a bit out of this.
He's pretty good. He's pretty good, actually, but he hadn't said as big a word as you said. Again, be quiet, Dave. What was that word again? Say
extemporaneous.
Extemporaneous.
Yeah, that's going to go right over the rock crowd's head.
I have no idea what that is, but it sounds like my new death metal band.
Yeah, with the unreadable logo.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, tree branches. Right.
Let's talk about that metal show. We can't have you on this show without talking about that show. So first of all, congratulations. 14 seasons is badass for a show that was sorely needed, obviously had an audience. When I think that it lasted 14 seasons, that's just incredible for the type of show it was and for the audience that it catered to. Because that audience is often marginalized and considered so small and not important, but 14 seasons, congratulations. So tell me, on that 14 seasons on that show, which guest was the most fun for you personally to have on the show?
Well, the 14, thank you. And the 14 season sounds nice, but they just didn't have any other shows.
Fill in airtime.
Yeah, if they had other shows, we probably would have lasted one season. But
so the network was just going, just play it again.
Right. Man, I always break it down into two categories: my favorite guests, and then guests that are my favorite because we're making a TV show. So for me, my hero of life is Lemmy. So anytime Lemmy was on the show, that was good enough for me. I don't care if he just sat there and smoked and didn't say a word. That, to me, that's the best show.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper, who's obviously, he's, still performing at such a high level. He's such a gentleman. He showed up by himself every time, with a book and just, hey, Coop, you need anything? Can we get you some food? No, I'm good. I'm just going to sit and read my book, whatever. And Brian Johnson, same thing. Brian Johnson shows up, just dressed like he dresses on stage with the cabbie hat and the jeans and the black T-shirt, and no entourage or anything, and just, real down-to-earth guy. So, guys like that, are personal favorites. For making a TV show, I like the guys who, whether you loved them or hate them, you had to watch the show. So guys like, Marilyn Manson, Ted Nugent, Phil Anselmo, Dave Mustaine, guys who will say anything at any time. And again, even if you didn't like him, you go, I got to watch because I know he's going to say something that'll make me angry, And so making a TV show, I dig those kind of guests.
Yeah. I could totally relate. As a journalist myself, people ask me that all the time. Who's your favorite interview? And I have the exact same two categories. I have the people that I'm proud to have interviewed because I appreciate who they are and they're personal heroes of mine. But then I have the interviews that were fantastic because the person will say anything or else they're just a great conversationalist. And I, like you, one of my all-time favorites is Lemmy because he's Lemmy. But then on the other hand, I've always had great interviews with Bret Michaels from Poison because he's such a talker, And so I totally get what you're saying. Did you ever have anybody come on the show that surprised you in a bad way? Anybody that was like belligerent or showed up wasted or just pissed you guys off for one reason or another, too many demands?
Oh, God, no.
Besides Jason.
Eddie Trunk showed up pretty a couple of times. No, we were a safe space for people. It's like
who was that redheaded guy that was always tagging along? Oh, Jim, it's Jim. That's Jim. That's right.
Oh yeah, I forgot he was on. Yeah,
he was there too. That's right.
No, people were cool because like they knew we were legit fans and they knew they were going to get a fair shake. And, we wanted to be the Tonight Show for, rock fans. You're not having, George Lynch isn't going to be on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno back then, but, right. For us, he's our Channing Tatum or, Jared Leto, right. To us, that's who he is. Yeah. So we treated everybody with respect. We broke balls, of course, if we knew somebody really well, we'd break balls more than others. But no, even Yngwie, came on like right in the first season, I think, or maybe the second season of the show, when really nobody still knew who we were. And the guy did this show several times and, he never unleashed the fury once, which I'm kind of pissed about because, we would have got some good press out of that. But everybody, honestly, man, it was such a positive experience. And, I'm glad because, they say, never meet your idols, but I haven't been disappointed by one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really, really amazing that there's not any, it's the same with when, someone has asked me pretty much the same question, not to turn everything towards me, but I'll tell you when they say, did you ever tour with anybody that was just a real asshole? And no, maybe I was the asshole. Maybe someone didn't like, they finally met me and was like, that guy's fucked up, man. But it's the same thing. I'm joyfully surprised that no one was actually hardcore on me and tell me to, I'm going to kick you off the, no threats or no one was belligerent or out of line at all. It was usually, you got to think about what it is that we're doing here. All the three of us in this room and the people that are listening and everything. It's like, why would someone come in and just, other than Yngwie when he unleashes the fury, but when I'm saying he got popular because of that, didn't he? Just for being a rager sometimes. Yeah. Was it because he was drunk?
Yeah. So, and he's still, people still ask him all the time in interviews about it. And, he's like, look, that's back. He admits, he goes, I was drinking heavily back then. It was a long flight to Japan, and we were in first class and taking full advantage of it. And the tape's still out there on the internet. It's hilarious. When he says, "You unleashed the fucking fury," and I'm glad the guy can laugh about it now.
Yeah,
You know,
that says a lot right there. Anyway, what I'm saying is this is entertainment and this is passion and this is love, and we've all grown up as the same people that we are right now. If you are a rocker when you're a young person, and then you look like we do when you're 50 something, you're kind of fucked. This is who you are, and this is what you do, and you break balls because you love each other. You're not breaking balls because you want to unleash the fury or be a dick to someone because it's sport for you. I have a record collection, and the people that made these songs and this music have changed my entire scope of life. And this is a way of life. I am this way because of music. And I know that you guys can agree, and I know that the people listening and watching are the same fucking way. And I tip my hat to anyone who understands that.
When we did that metal show, man, I just thought of it as me hanging out with two of my best friends and talking about this music that we love. And then you sort of realize over the years, like, everybody from James Hetfield all the way down would say thank you. I hope you know how important to the scene your show is. And, bands would say how they got a new record deal because of doing our show, or they got a tour that they didn't think they'd get because they got the exposure on the show. And so when you start to learn about that part of it, how can it be anything more rewarding to return the favor to all these amazing musicians and artists that are all in our record collection that we worshipped over the years. And so if we've given back at all and helped any of these guys in any way, man, then I can say proudly, we did our job.
Yes, and let me just say this: you could say this in a phrase, complimentary to our industry. Your show is complimentary to our industry.
Yeah.
And thank God that happened. Now, I want to throw this out. Is there any truth to you guys publicists reaching out to like Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons to try to have them on that metal show? And they said something to the effect of, why would I want to be on Wayne's World? Tell me about that.
That was actually Paul Stanley was doing like I don't know what it was, like a TED talk or something. He was in front of a bunch of younger rock fans, and somebody in the crowd asked him, how come you've never done that metal show? And Paul said, he goes, oh yeah. He goes, that's a little like Wayne's World, that show, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
And we thought it was, we thought it was hilarious. I mean, I wish we were Wayne's World. We'd have made a lot more money.
It is. Well, if it wouldn't have been for, and I say this quite often, and I'll just wear it on my sleeve. It's like, that's one of the shows that Talk Louder rips off. It's that metal show, Wayne's World, and Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah.
It's pretty much what we're ripping off right fucking now. I'm not going to mince any words for you.
If it makes you feel better, Don, we haven't had Paul Stanley or Gene Simmons either. So there's that. We're all in good company there.
Right.
So Eddie,
we took a few shots at those guys over the year, all in good fun, because at the end of the day, again, we'll go back to the Destroyer album. I can separate totally. When I put that record on still to this day and it starts playing, there's, there could be no insult that could ruin my enjoyment of my Kiss records. I mean, that's just, it's ingrained in me. And the fact that Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons even know who I am and who we were was doubt, whatever, regardless of what they would say, it was cool that they knew us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's right.
So,
they didn't say at any point, that metal show, what is that? They didn't say that. He had an answer for you. Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So Eddie used to make it quite known that he always wanted to have, Gene and Paul on the show because he's a huge Kiss fan. And it never happened. But who is the one band that you wanted to have on the show that you never got on?
You guys had Peter Criss, though. You guys
and
had
Ace.
Yeah, that's right.
And Ace. Ace
you
is
had the other two
no-brainer.
guys, just not Gene and Paul.
Yeah. But who's the band that got away for you personally, Don?
Well, I mean, obviously, rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen. We never were able to have Eddie on. And, I understand that, those guys had always run a tight ship publicity wise. They really picked their spots. We're doing stuff. I know Eddie really preferred to talk to like guitar magazines and stuff like that. So, but there was a point where, he started sending his equipment for our guest musicians. And that's what, everybody played through the last handful of seasons was, all the EVH amps and equipment. So we thought at some point, maybe the more stuff he sends, maybe eventually he'll send himself along and we'll have some time with Eddie, but it never happened. And, now he's gone. But
the truck backs up and the back goes up and Eddie's there with, hey, what's up, guys?
They take him out on a hand cart.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Eddie Van Halen would have been obviously a great one.
I think that I think that what you guys pulled off, just as fans, is amazing. But to be sitting there next to Kirk Hammett and Michael Schenker at the same time. They're sitting right next to you at the same time. And then, Brian Johnson, I would have turned it into Wayne. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. I think that it's amazing what you guys pulled off all the way around. Let me ask you this. I've been meaning to ask this. When did you meet Jim Florentine? Because and I'll throw this into a soup and then you can tear it all apart and tell me the ingredients. How did you and Jim hook up, and then how did you and Jim hook up with Eddie to get this show happening?
Yeah.
I met Jim before I was doing comedy even. I had seen some videos of Jim and I thought he was hilarious. He had long blonde curly hair back then, and I had longer hair back then too. And a comic friend of mine who knew Jim was like, "You got to meet Jim Florentine." I go, "Oh man, he's a really funny comic. Yeah, I'd love to meet him." He goes, "You guys are cut from the same cloth. You guys both love metal, you love comedy, you love strippers. You guys have to meet." So, we've all gone through our stripper phase. So we met, and I started tagging along with him to gigs, and then, and I was secretly writing stuff on the side for years. And, that's when I got my bravery to ask Jim, like, how can I kind of get going with this? I wrote all this material and I don't know what to do. I don't know if you want it or whatever. He goes, "No," he goes, "Come with me to a gig and I'll get you some stage time if you want to, give this a try." So, Jim, was the first guy to like really, get me to go up there and do it. And, it was fairly miserable, but I got a couple mercy laughs, and
But
22 years later, I still got a couple mercy laughs. But
well, you came to the right place today. I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
that
I didn't know
Jim
that.
was like this Pied Piper, and he was like dragging you into the pit, right? You didn't want to go in the pit. I don't know, man. I might break my arm or something. I'm a quarterback. No, man, you're coming into the pit. And here you are, like you said. Hats off to Jim. You guys are definitely cut from the same cloth.
So how did the two of you then hook up with Eddie Trunk to finish off Jason's question?
Yeah. Obviously, Jim and I have been now, comedy partners in crime for, 20 plus years. So, when you find a great ally in the business, as you guys know, you hold on to them tightly. And, Eddie was the third piece of the puzzle because, we were fans of his radio show and we listened to him talk about these bands and the passion he had for them. And we're like, yeah, he's one of us too. Yes. We got to meet this guy. And we met him backstage at an Ozfest in Jersey. And he, said, "Hey, why don't you come up and sit in on the show with me sometime?" And that's really how it all got started. And, here we are all these years later, and I've done so many things together. And, and still best friends. That we hung a lot, during the early days of the lockdown. We sit down at Eddie's beach house outside and grill and drink beers and solve all the world's problems. And it was great. It's great that we're all still. I say we still do the show. It's still the same crap that we talk about. We still end up talking about which Iron Maiden album's better or who's the better singer for this band or that band. We're just not getting paid.
You're in Eddie's backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you also related to that metal show, because I can't not ask you again. How much maintenance went into getting those sideburns so razor sharp, man?
Everybody asks you about your sideburns.
Well, you've never seen anything like it, and I can't tell they're gone now. Yeah.
No, they're still there.
Your hair's longer now.
Yeah, the hair's longer, and the trick was she put powder in them.
Ah.
So they really pop.
Okay. So now that you don't have the makeup crew, they're not as evident as they were before.
Yeah.
So who inspired the sideburns?
Lemmy. I'm not brave enough to connect him to the mustache, but I just always thought the sideburns to me, you have to have them because they're like the they're like when you have like a motorcycle helmet on. It's like the clasp. Like I feel if I don't have the sideburns, my hair will just fly right off.
Yeah, it's a chin strap.
Yeah, it's like a chin strap. It just doesn't fully connect. And Sammy Hagar used to love my sideburns. He would always, when he came on that metal show, he would always tease me about them. He goes, bro, with those he goes, I got an El Camino that would be a perfect match for your sideburns.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean they were razor sharp. I got to give you that. They were a real piece of work, and still are. You just don't have the makeup girl or the makeup guy or whatever, I guess.
Hey,
I carve them in for the live shows
For the tour, yeah.
Hey, I want to play a little game with you real quick.
All right.
Okay, so do you have this?
Not on vinyl, no.
This is the new. What do you have? The new Danko Jones Power Trio?
Yes, but not on vinyl.
What? That's you've made that very clear, Don.
But I will.
But yes, you will. Your name is in here.
Oh wow!
He put you and Jim in here.
Danko was another guy like you, and so many other guys that we met even before that metal show who dug what we were doing comedically, and Danko is a guy that. You want to talk about a great front man, a guy who will. He's almost like he's like D. He's the heckler.
He's the heckler.
Yeah.
He's gonna bring you up to the stage. He's gonna go, hey you, why you walking away? You better come over here because in 5 minutes you're gonna be singing my song.
Yeah.
That's him. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you meet him. And then the first time I met him, I didn't even realize it was him because he was so quiet and so reserved, and he had a hoodie on and he was just kind of standing against the wall, not saying anything. And then Jim's finally like, this is Danko. And I'm like, oh.
That was a good Jim impression. I guess you hung out with him long enough to be able to do a Jim.
Yeah.
Now, have you heard this?
I just admired his stage presence.
Do you know this record?
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
We sweat blood.
This record makes me want to whip out my cock. So this one, when you listen to this one and you listen to this one, is there a go-to between these two? Maybe it's a bad time because this one's brand effing new.
Yeah, that's the problem. That the Power Trio is too new to to stack it against some of the old classics. But once I live with Power Trio for a while, I'm sure and if we do this podcast a year from now, I'll go, oh, Power Trio is a million times better than We Sweat Blood. And then if we do it a year after that, I'll say We Sweat Blood is better. It's
right. Yeah, I guess it depends.
It's a never-ending argument.
Depends on what mood you're in, but We Sweat Blood is just like a hammerhead. It just kills every time. But Power Trio, I had to bring Danko into this. One, because I saw you and Jim's name in the thank you list, which I think is awesome. Can you tell I'm jealous that I'm not in there?
Well, I'm not either. So
See what I mean? He didn't put Metal Dave in there either. What the hell, Danko?
he didn't get a song title out of me. Maybe
I'm-
that's why.
Right. He didn't like. Yeah, he didn't. Well, he's like Don. He doesn't know that you're the muse. But I'm totally down with Danko, as you know. I'm extremely proud to tell this story. Jim was down in San Antonio he was on tour doing a comic. He was out on the road with like 3 or 4 other comics, and they played somewhere. Dave will know where this is. This place somewhere. It wasn't Sunset Station. That is the venue, but it was in a room. It was in a smaller room, and they had comics in there. And I went down there to watch Jim's set, and it was when I was fairly new, maybe 6 months or a year into being a huge Danko Jones fan, because I heard about him from this Danko fan in Scotland. Name's escaping me. Alison Murray turned me on to Danko Jones, and it was like when Danko only had like 2 or 3 records out. Blood wasn't even out yet. And I'm like telling Jim, man, there's this guy from Canada, Danko Jones. He's like, what? What's a Danko Jones? Turned Jim on to Danko. And I'm sure that as soon as he heard it, he was like, dude, check this out. Hey, Don, check this out. The Jason, the Texas.
Jason McMaster told me about the band. Listen to them.
Yeah. Oh man, I could do this for hours. They're like, if you could pick one thing that kind of got you hooked on rock and roll, what would it be?
Kiss Destroyer.
Yeah. He's a good listener.
Yeah, he is a good listener. That was the 3rd time Destroyers come up in this episode, and I'm not complaining one bit.
That's my gateway drug for sure.
Hey, Don, we really appreciate you being on the show. I could talk to you for hours and hours. You're such a solid dude, and we're cut from the same cloth, just like me and Dave, and we just really appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
What can I say, man? I really, how much I appreciate your friendship and still a big fan to this day, which is great. And Dave, it was great meeting you and hanging today. And let me know if I could see you guys in Austin. And anytime you need me, I'm here, brothers.
Go ahead, Don.
Sorry, Bill. What'd you say? Stay extemporaneous, guys.